The St. Louis Cardinals are officially back in Jupiter, Florida, with pitchers and catchers reporting. Spring training fully underway. Almost everyone's reported to camp, including Nolan Arenado, who's on his way right now. So Nolan's back too. We'll talk a little bit about the whole Nolan situation, him being back, but we really want to get into a bunch of like the storylines that have really started to erupt or perk up through camp, whether it's through interviews with John Mozeliak, Oli Marmol players, how the rotation's looking out center field, all these different types of things. We just got some notes that we want to talk through on this episode of Dealing the Cards. Hey, welcome back to Dealing the Cards. I'm Josh. This is Andrew. We're missing our Yadier Molina, who is watching his basketball team right now in Sandy. If you get the reference, you get the reference. If you don't, that's okay. We're a St. Louis Cardinals podcast. Usually 2 episodes a week, and then also Birds on the Front of Cream. He's on vacation right now, but when he comes back, we've got a lot of prospect content on the way. So be ready for that. Really excited for just some fun stuff we've been teasing out a little bit. We'll have different reporters and potentially members of the Cardinals organization and such on the podcast throughout the spring, and then launch into the 2025 season. So we're getting warmed up as the Cardinals are getting warmed up. And someone who's being warmed up in Southern California, but now is on his way to Jupiter, Florida, is Nolan Arenado, which last time I talked, I said, I'm confident he's still going to get traded. And then like 12 hours later, Bregman signed. Wait, Bregman signed after we talked, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then it was like, oh, yeah, that's not happening. So Nolan Arenado is a Cardinal. It'd be pretty shocking if he's not at this point, which has a lot of ramifications on the roster. Again, we've talked about it all offseason, but now it's real. So now instead of like all the speculation, we can kind of be like, okay, he's here. What does that mean? I know we debated last time whether we thought it was a good or a bad thing for him to be on the roster. I took the side more of not that it was not that it's like the end of the world if he's here, but that I just saw so many potential benefits to him being gone, getting more bats for young players. Again, Gorman's defense is not like the end all be all that we need to see, but it'd be nice to know if he can handle third base or Donovan or Sid JC, whoever you want to put there. And they definitely have more of a pinch at bats wise. Injuries and stuff can figure that out as well. Who knows? Maybe Nato goes on a tear in the first half and gets traded at the deadline, or maybe they sell all the way and Contreras gets like. There's a lot of things that could happen between now and July, but at least for the beginning of the year, barring injuries, they got a pretty full position player group right now. But Andrew, were you surprised that Bregman went to the Red Sox and that ended up not happening? Or did you, I know last time we talked, we were kind of debating which way to go, but it kind of felt to me that the Red Sox were either going to get Arenado or no one. I didn't think the Bregman thing was going to work out, and then it did. So how surprised were you when Bregman went there? And how are you feeling right now knowing that Nato's on his way to Jupiter to be a Cardinal?
Yeah, to me, it seemed like Bregman had 3 options the whole way, which were the Cubs, the Tigers, and the Red Sox. And the Red Sox haven't really done much on the offensive side all offseason. And, I feel like the Cubs are always a piece short, and the Tigers kind of don't really – they kind of don't really seem to be that aggressive after the Javier Baez signing, which is a total disaster for them, which makes sense. Like, if my organization signed a player like that long-term, and it just was like, honestly, like I think there's an argument to be made that between him and Rendon to be the worst contract in baseball right now. But that whole situation with the Angels is a whole mess. But,
wait, Rendon and who's the other worst contract in baseball? Oh, Baez, yeah.
Because Baez, like, he's not always hurt, but like he's just always bad, and I feel like that's just that might be worse, honestly, because like at least the Angels can throw someone else at third base when Rendon isn't playing. But like I feel like the Red Sox out of those 3 was the most likely option, kind of just because they do make those big moves from time to time. They signed Trevor Story, they signed Yoshida, they signed a couple of those guys that didn't really pan out, which maybe is the fault of a former executive over there, but I don't know. Hopefully, yeah. I don't want to call it Hon Bloom too much for that. I trust that he'll make good signings and stuff once he's officially in charge. But it seemed like a Red Sox move to do, and with the left field wall and all that stuff, I feel like Bregman will be just fine. I do think it's weird that the Red Sox were willing to pay like twice as much for Bregman as Arenado. And I was like, I don't know if that's smart, because they probably could have had Arenado for like $20 million a year and given up nothing.
Yeah.
But they decided to pivot to Bregman, and it's a 3-year contract, and Arenado only has 3 years left. So it's like the same. It's apples to apples here, where it's like I don't know why they did that. That seems kind of strange. Maybe they're really just that low on Arenado, which is, I guess, fair.
Or high on Bregman.
Yeah, but I thought that was a little bit odd, the amount that they gave him. I don't think he's worth that over the course of 3 years. But he was looking for a longer term deal. So it makes sense that he would sacrifice the years to get more AAV there. But yeah, I kind of always envisioned that Boston would be a fit, and I kind of thought that Arenado would end up staying. Especially once Mo said it was like a 50-50 at winter warm-up, I was like, I'm leaning more towards the side of this not happening, because he seemed so like set on it at the start of the offseason, and then for it to just be a 50-50 by winter warm-up is like, clearly things are not going the way that you want them to be going. And am I disappointed that Bregman signed so late? Yes, because I think could have opened up options. The Angels pivoted to Moncada at third base, who's not the player that he used to be, but if Bregman had signed a little bit earlier, and that market had cleared up, maybe an option over there would have ended up working out for Arenado, because clearly Rendon is not part of their picture anymore. And hey, at least we have Arenado, not Rendon. We can be thankful for that, because Rendon is like what Tyler O'Neill, but
it's a different level. It's a whole different level.
A completely different tier.
It's like a different stratosphere of it.
Yeah,
we don't need to linger too much on the Red Sox side of it, but I do think it's interesting they went Bregman. To your point, I thought Arenado at that money, especially the Cardinals were going to eat some of it, made more sense. But to their point, they're banking on Bregman's going to want to have career years every year so he can re-hit free agency and get a long-term deal. He has opt-outs every single year, so he could ride it out $40 million a year each year, or again, try to have a career year, go get big money, and that's a good thing to bet on for them. And if it doesn't work out, again, it's 3 years rather than 7, which would have been his thing originally. It also gives them positional flexibility, where if Christian Campbell's ready to play opening day, he can play second base, and Bregman can play third, and Devers plays first, and Casas is DH, or Devers is DH. But then if Campbell's not ready, Bregman can play second, Devers stays at third. I see that side of it, where Nato was third base for them or not. So it did kind of shoehorn them a little bit. Yeah, but when you have Devers and Casas, those guys will play first base, not Bregman, but or not Arenado. So that side of it was whatever. And we'll get into this later, but again, I'm not trying to backtrack, because I was the guy who was I'd rather just see Nato go somewhere else. But now that he's here, what you got to root for is that he's going to be motivated, right? You got to root for him to be a guy that's been all offseason. My own fan base basically didn't want me, and this organization didn't. Again, the Cardinals approached him about the possibility of being traded. They weren't trying to force him out, and Nato didn't try to force himself out. So we got to make sure we are all on the same page. You hear about this wasn't Arenado forcing requesting a trade. He didn't request one. He just said he's open to it, and the Cardinals didn't say, hey, we're well, clearly they wanted to move him and his money once he was ready, but they weren't willing to move heaven and earth to make it happen either. So now he's here, and he's going to prove people wrong, right? He's going to prove his value. And so we'll get into it later, but who knows? Maybe Nato does bounce back in the first half, and now teams are going to call the Cardinals being oh, remember those deals we talked about? Mo's going to be no, I'm not going to eat half his contract and get nothing for him now. Now you're going to have to pay me something real to get this guy. So that's what you got to bank on and hope for at this point. But again, we've talked kind of back and forth all offseason about what Nato staying in St. Louis means for the position player group and how the lineup would be constructed and all this kind of stuff. But one of the big questions has been, okay, if you have Nato at third base, what that inherently does is it takes away Gorman from third. So they have Gorman back as second. Brendan Donovan can't be the everyday second baseman. So now he either has to kind of be the placeholder DH or move to the outfield, where Nootbaar would have to move to center field. Now, the pushback with that is, well, does Oli Marmol want to play Nootbaar in center field, or does he want Mr. Sinisi, Michael Ciani, or Victor Scott out there instead? Which, again, if they prove in camp, if Ciani looks great in camp, okay, yeah, you want a bat who also is great at defense, even if he's not as good of a bat as a Nootbaar. But at that point, if you're league average or better, then that defense really plays. But when you're as bad offensively as he was last year, or Scott, you've got to keep all options open. So there's been 2 different media sessions that Oli's done in camp that have kind of given you both sides of it. The first one he did, it really seemed like he was kind of committing to Victor Scott, Michael Ciani in center field. Didn't really seem like he wanted to budge on it. But then our friend Brendan Schaefer posted a tweet today over on X, Twitter, whatever, and was talking through, basically he asked Oli, in philosophy-wise, which this applies to catcher and other positions too, how much are they going to value offense versus defense this year? And last year they made it a point, because how bad they were defensively in 2023, that they really wanted to get back to having guys out there who could not boot the ball around the infield, make dumb mistakes in the outfield. Like, they need to clean up the defense in 2024. They did that. This year it seems like he's a little bit more open to it. I would still bet on Michael Ciani or Victor Scott being the center fielder, but he talked about how this is kind of like a big picture conversation between him and the front office and what they want to do with philosophy around roster construction, philosophy around the kind of players they want to play. But then also, in a year like this, are they valuing trying to put the best defense out there for the starting pitcher who's on the mound that day and help them with run prevention? Or are they concerned with developing bats? Or, like, if there's a young pitcher out there, do they want run support for that guy? Or do they want Michael Ciani in center field tracking on all these fly balls in case they make a mistake? So he talked about how camp is going to help shine a light on that, right? Like, again, we haven't seen, like, if Newt is terrible in camp, it's like, okay, that's not going to work. Or if Ciani and Scott are terrible, it's like, okay, you got to open up the possibilities of someone else playing center field. But Scott looks awesome. Ciani looks awesome. If those two are struggling and Newt looks awesome, you got to be willing to be flexible. And it seems like the Cardinals, based on how things will happen, play out in spring training, will be flexible to who they play at, whether it's catcher or center field. And then throughout the season, they'll be flexible and open to it too, where if, like, Alec Burleson and Thomas Ajayci are just hitting so well that you can't keep them on the bench, then they're going to have to make opportunities for them, which means someone like Ciani or Scott may have to sit, or, well, I guess you wouldn't sit a catcher for one of them, but that's how you fit people into lineup, right? Is that center field role. So just kind of reflecting through all that's what's said right there, kind of what's your current positioning on the idea of how they should be constructing the roster? Are they making too much about needing good defense out there? Like, in my opinion, they really should get the bats out there. What are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, with Arenado back on the roster, my one caveat for, like, wanting him back was that you need Newt in center field pretty much, because the main guys that you want to get playing time next year are Newt, Gorman, Walker, and Burleson. And with Arenado staying, like, Donovan or Gorman, or no, Donovan can no longer play second base because Gorman has to play second base, which moves him into the outfield. And then Walker, Burleson, one of those two is going to be squeezed out of the lineup every day, assuming Arenado's there. And that's just not really okay. We saw a lot of that last season, especially with, like, Goldie still on the team and taking up reps at first base, because when Contreras was healthy, then Herrera wouldn't get any playing time. And, like, the young guys that needed the playing time last season just didn't really get it because those veterans were there. And because you had Ciani or Scott in center field every day. And I think getting playing time for Scott is important. He's a guy that I would invest in for the future. But if it's Michael Ciani out there every day, like, we've kind of seen what he is at his best. We saw him get pretty lucky with BABIP a little bit in the first half before.
Very lucky.
Yes. So
just to put numbers to it, I think during his stretch where people was like, oh, he can hit now, he had over 400 BABIP.
Yeah. So,
and I think, and someone was like, Harrison Bader sustained a high BABIP one year. It was like, yeah, he had like a 360 BABIP one year, but, like, the league high last year was like 360. Like, you don't maintain that. Like, that's just not a thing. So even fast guys, it's like, I get he's got speed, but 400 BABIP, kind of crazy.
He's got speed, but, like, I don't know. I feel like he gets caught a lot more than he should stealing, but that's a different issue. I mean, I think it's totally acceptable to use Newt in center fields, and for it to be fun, to try it at least. Like, I'm wearing the World Baseball Classic hat. And the one thing I always point to is that, like, the Japanese lineup that Newt played with, like, horrible. defenders in the outfield. They have Yoshida and Suzuki in the outfield, both of which are transitioning into DHs. And New Park man center field, and they won a championship. Look at that. Like it seemed okay for them. So I feel like we can try it here. I know it's a small sample size, like 10 games in the tournament, but still, like I don't his defense being league average, even with Walker next to him, and we don't really know what he is defensively. Like it'll be fine. Like we can look at spring, like if it looks really bad for Newbar, which we've seen enough of him in center field to know that it's probably not going to be, and if Walker's defense looks improved, I don't see any issue with that. Obviously, if Siani or Scott looks good in camp, I'm leaning more towards Scott. I think Siani is what he is. I don't think he's going to make many massive improvements to be anything more than a defensive replacement in late innings, but we need to see that, especially with Arenado staying. Because you can't waste at bats on Siani. It's just not it's not going to work.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, again, I'm not ruling out the possibility Siani looks good in camp, and I think B-Shave today was saying that he thought Siani had one of the best looking swings in camp so far, but I'm not much to talk in that one. I think B-Shave is more of a Siani fan than most people are. So, and I like Siani for what he is. He's a great defender, and it's an awesome fourth outfielder type, but he is way more valuable to your team than he is someone else. If you put him up on the trade market, I don't really think you're getting much in return for him, but it's fine. It's whatever. If Scott shows out, put him in center. If he doesn't, put him in AAA, let Newbar stay in center or play in center. That's my opinion. But I do want to thank a couple of sponsors of our podcast before. I actually want to go back to Oli and talk a little bit about some of his interviews from this week, because I think they've been really interesting. But first, I want to thank the presenting sponsor of the Dealing Cards podcast. That's 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet. They're open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. And they buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards. They have the newest selections of packs, boxes, and single cards of local players and stars from around the league, whether it's a two-way Mason Wynn card, a prospect card of Oli Marmol, the new box sets. Andrew, you want to tell us about the boxes that are coming in store for them right now?
Yeah, we got the latest Topps product for 2025 Series 1 is at 314 Sports Cards right now. People have been hitting good stuff out of there. I saw they had a Mike Trout auto come out of one of those boxes this morning.
Oh, wow.
But it was not an Erick Fedde card. So I made sure to leave a comment on there. But if you find an Erick Fedde card, you can't give it up. It's not allowed. Michael McGreevy also has rookie cards in that set. I'm sure Kareem and Sandy will try to buy some of those up next time they're in the shop. But yeah, it's exciting stuff. The start of baseball season and new players in the product.
Yeah, you always love that. And we also want to talk about our partnership with Underdog Sports. They're our favorite place to play fantasy games. You can play now in Missouri, Illinois, surrounding states. Most states, I think at this point, you can play Underdog. I think it's fantasy sports. You got to check out Pick'em. It's so easy to play. You just pick 2 to 8 stats of players from around pretty much any sport, and you choose whether they go higher or lower than the stat line that's on there that day. You can win 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. If that sounds like fun, sign up with the promo code CARDS, which is on our screen now, or if you're listening audio, CARDS, for a claim your first free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We can't wait to see your entries. Again, football season's over, but baseball is right around the corner. College basketball, you got March Madness coming up, NBA, all types of things to play fantasy sports on. So go check them out. There is a link in the bio of our YouTube video if you want to download, or you can go to the links on our social media in our bios there, or description of the video, sorry. Or if you're listening on audio, there should be a link in the audio descriptions as well. For Underdog, let us know if you played. So many of you have already started trying it out and having fun with it. So yeah, it's our favorite place to play fantasy sports in Missouri, Illinois, and all around.
Yeah, there's some baseball fantasy drafts going right now. I'm officially retired from fantasy like baseball leagues and stuff. It's too much work. I can't deal with it. But there are drafts that you can do right now. I don't think you have to like manage your rosters or anything like that. So maybe I'll give that a try. And
in Underdog you can do that?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, interesting.
Because I saw someone posting some baseball pick'ems, and I'll have those ready as soon as the Tokyo series. Imanaga lower on everything except earned runs allowed, then higher. But
nice.
Yeah, he'll be starting in Japan, and hopefully that does not go well for him. My advice to the Dodgers is to bat Tommy Edman third.
He'll rake.
But
well, Andrew, I think you're the only one who cares about the Tokyo series, so we're gonna move on to Ollie's. You do need Imanaga to not have a good year. So I
need Imanaga to be like, no, the fact that he's pitching the first game of the season.
It'd be awesome if the Dodgers rake him.
I need them to just. I need the Dodgers to be exactly who everyone thinks they're going to be that series. Just destroy Imanaga, please.
Yeah. Hey, good question before we keep going. I like this from Graham. How bad would Michaelis have to be DFA before the deadline? I think it'd be a combination of like, I don't know, what do you think, Andrew? Like, he's got to be bad, and they've got to have enough young options on the roster that they feel ready to like go ahead and supplant him with.
I think they would just put him on the IL.
I mean, no, because if he probably wants to play, so it's like if you release him, you give him the opportunity to go play somewhere. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that. But also, he could be a trade guy, where it's like if a team needs innings, you're not going to get any. But if he's pitching fine, like so, there's
Thomas.
What was that?
You might get Lane Thomas.
You might get a Lane Thomas type. I mean, because like even last year, like we saw, there's a lot of buyers and sellers nowadays. So like, there's a world where the Cardinals have young options they want to start throwing, but they're in contention, and they could move Michaelis.
You do not just say that they're going to be buyers at the deadline.
No, I'm saying like not that like they might not even be like they might be contending, like, or like their version of contending. I'm not saying they're like first place or anything, but like last year where they were like in the race or slightly out of, like slightly lower than that, they could move a Michaelis while still trying to win. Again, there's a world where they contend this year. So
buyers at the deadline. I don't know.
It's possible. Maybe. I mean, it's possible.
I don't think this team, like, I think this team could be in first place and they still would just stand pat at the deadline because that's what they've been doing all offseason.
Well, that's going into the offseason because, like, their thing has been they want to figure out fans are going to come back to the ballpark. And if they're in contention and fans are coming back, they might add. And they've talked about they have room. They're not like, that's why they've talked about they don't have to move Nato because they're fine. They claim they're fine financially now, at least where they're at. But anyways, that's not the point. I do want to get into Ollie's interview, specifically on 101 ESPN, the morning show. If you haven't checked that out yet, I highly recommend going. I think that was Thursday's episode. If you go on their podcast feeds, you can find just the interview. But if you go on YouTube, you'll have to like watch through the video to find it. Ollie's awesome, man. I really like Oli, and I think he gets a really bad rap on social media, and he talks about it, and he doesn't look at that stuff. I thought it was funny. He said sometimes when him and the coaches need a good laugh, he'll let one of the coaches go on Twitter or something and just find the 5 funniest things that someone said, and they'll read it out. And it'll be like, I mean, guessing it's like terrible stuff about them, but they'll just have a laugh about it because like it's whatever. It's part of the job. Did you listen to the interview, Andrew, at all, or did you get?
Yeah, I listened to the whole thing.
Okay.
Ollie's my favorite. So
well, I didn't know. So like that Tony La Russa story, I loved where he talked about, I think he was going into his first year, going to his second year managing. They saw each other at the baseball writers dinner that year. And Tony asked to like sit down and like have a drink with him and talk for a while. And Ollie said that Tony just kept telling him story after story and encouraging him. And then they both looked up and it was 5 a.m. Like they'd been there all night talking, and he was just getting poured into by Tony. And he said he's taken a lot of those lessons and helped it to develop as a manager. His posture, a lot of that interview too. Like here, I'll let you, like, I've got plenty I could say from it, but what are some things that stood out from you for that about him as a manager?
Yeah, I mean, he took accountability for like pretty much every decision that's made on the field, which for better or for worse, right? Like there's certain things that we really like about what Ollie's doing with the bullpen. But like there's also certain things that we were kind of frustrated by, where like Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado kept batting third and fourth, although I still agree with that. And like last season, you were going to ride or die with them. So it didn't really make sense to bat anybody else in those positions. But like there's certain things like Ciani playing all the time, Walker being a platoon bat. Although that's the one that I would ask about, because like, yes, Walker was used as a platoon bat against lefties, which I thought was really dumb, but also Mo called him up. So like there had to have been some discourse there about how Walker would have been used. And I think Mo was the one who said that they were going to platoon him. So I don't really like, that's one thing that I'm not really sure who deserves the criticism for, but like some of the stuff with Pajes and Herrera, with Herrera not really getting a chance to play last year. It was a little bit frustrating, but that was something that I thought was good to hear that he was taking accountability. It was like any decision on the field that you don't like comes straight from me. Like he's not being fed by the front office, anything. Like he's not a yes man to Mo, and to some people that might make him more of a villain, and to some people, I think to more people that probably endears him more to the fan base. And then just how he handles like the criticisms and stuff, and like talking about how everyone on Twitter hates him. It's not true. I don't hate you, Oli. I like you. But I mean, it's just good, right? Like he's bringing in people that are better to help the organization. He's not really looking out for his own job in a lot of these situations where some people just kind of have these assumptions about him that are wrong, and it's good to hear him clear that up.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. Last year, he had that Xavier Scruggs interview that I thought was really good. Last year, winter warm-up, it was really good, where he was asked about, I can't remember, I might have been the one to ask it even. No, someone else, because I asked him about something with Donovan. Someone asked him about, like, hey, like, Yachty was supposed to be there, and that was when everyone's like, is Yachty going to be the next manager of the Cardinals? And he's like, how does that make you feel? And he's like, I'm not insecure. Like, I'm secure in who I am and my job, and the best thing for the Cardinals is to bring in a guy like Yachty on this staff. And even if it makes me threatened, then I'm not the right person for this job if I'm threatened by having good people in the room. And he's like, I want to surround myself with smart coaches and intelligent guys around him. And there's a reason that you look and like Skip Schumacher was his first bench coach and became a manager somewhere. Matt Holliday is supposed to be a second bench coach, and he's going to be a future manager probably if he wants to invest in the game. He tried to bring Yachty into the dugout, and that wasn't like, we don't know what's the deal with Yachty, but it really seems like he's just not ready to commit to it. It's not necessarily that. I mean, if they offered him the manager role, I think he'd take it. But like, he's not like, he's less committed to an advisor role. Or Oli wanted him to be in the dugout every day. He's not ready to invest in something like that in this stage of his life, unless he gets more credence from it, right? Oli wants a guy like Albert Pujols on his staff. He's brought in Daniel Descalso, who's super well respected and might be a future manager himself. He got interviews with the White Sox already. Like, Oli loves bringing guys around him that are well-established voices that other people could look at and be like, hey, you can get rid of this Oli guy and hire this guy instead. And I just like that about him a lot. I love that story he told about that obnoxious fan. I think it was at a road game that was just screaming at him and calling him terrible names the whole game. And even like when he went out to make a pitching change, the guy was like, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. And Oli's like, I'm just praying the whole time that I'm right so that I can prove, like, that I can stick it to this guy. And then it works out. They win the game, and he turns and he calls the fan down to him and shakes his hand and is like, hey, how about you say all that stuff to my face now? And the guy, like, I mean, obviously, because this is what happens when you're not behind a keyboard or when you're multiple rows back from someone, you can say whatever you want, but then you get up close to someone, you're not going to talk like that typically. And the guy tries to apologize and it's like, oh, I didn't mean it. And then Oli didn't like stick it to him in that moment. He sat there with him for 10 to 15 minutes and was like, hey, let's talk about it. Like, what would you have done differently? Tell me what was wrong. And I like that because it's really easy for people to yell at someone and be like, you did the wrong thing, and have no reason to back it up. Like, I remember one time I did this on Twitter and I got ripped for it. And people were like, do your own job. I'm like, the point is I want you to tell me why you're so upset. I tweeted out something where it was like, people say all the time, and please stick with me for a second, that John Mozeliak just lies all the time. And so I was like, okay, I wasn't even trying to say it's wrong. I'm just saying, hey, can people show me times where he lied? Not that you disagreed with him or that what he believed was wrong. Tell me times where he actually lied about something. And people are like, oh, you're just a Mo defender. And I'm like, you're not telling me when he lied then. So like back up what you say. And so the same is with Oli. It's like, if you disagree with him, then tell him what you disagree with. And doesn't mean he's to agree with you. And I like how he said, when someone tells me something, guy or gal tells me something, and I feel like actually they had a good point, he's not afraid to admit he's wrong. He's not afraid to say, you know what, if I could go back, I would do that differently, and you're right. But then also too, like, if he disagrees with them, he'll give them the reason why. And just because a move doesn't work doesn't make it the wrong move, right? Like, we never get to see, like, he brought up the Ryan Helsley in 2022. People disagree with that a lot. It's like, okay, so if he didn't bring in Ryan Helsley in that spot and he brought in Steven Matz out of the bullpen instead, we would all like that? Like, no, you bring in your closer and it didn't work. And it doesn't mean that bringing in someone else would have worked, right? So I just really liked his processes with stuff. You can tell the players like him. Obviously, there's been some players over the years who don't like him, but name a manager who's 100% approval rating. That's very few. And that's the reason why like Albert Pujols is like the one guy that I would be like, hey, if you have the chance to hire Albert, I'd probably go ahead and do it, even though I like Oli. But like other than that, I think Oli's a good guy. And I think he's the right guy right now. And I'd be shocked if he's not the manager beyond this year, unless things go really poorly. And I just don't get the hate for Oli all the time. I just think it's really easy to scapegoat him. Obviously, the Schilt stuff ended, which is not his fault. Poorly constructed roster in 2023, not his fault. They overachieved in 2024. 2022, like they made the playoffs. They had a great year. They lost in a best of 3, which was really unfortunate. But I think overall, I've really liked Oli. I'm not trying to say he's the top 5 manager in the game, but I don't get the hate. I don't get why people think he's the worst manager of all time.
Yeah. I actually sat behind Oli at Angel Stadium at the road game. I wish I could have just like yelled at him and been like appreciative of him and showed some appreciation. I just didn't say anything. We made eye contact. I made eye contact with Oli. That was fun.
Yeah.
And then I saw him at winter warm up and almost fell out of my chair.
Starstruck.
I know, it was great. I like Oli.
Also, we disagree with him on things, right? Like, listen to the podcast long enough. Like, we literally just talked about the Siani stuff in center field and Pedro Baez. We do not like glaze everything he does. I just think overall, I really like him. And there's
I can be critical of Oli. Like, there's things but I don't think he should be fired because he put it defensively. Because like he's seen what happens when you have a terrible defense.
Yeah,
and maybe that impacts his decision making more. Also, the team won a lot when Pedro Baez started catcher last year. Or something.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like even though we disagree with Oli on that, he has reasoning behind his decisions. He's not an idiot. Like he doesn't just do things because whatever. Like that's why I wish we could sit down with him more often, not just us two, but like in general, and listen to him talk about the processes more. Because especially if you watch those post game stuff, usually it's just little snippets, but we don't get to see the behind the scenes stuff as much. But he's really good at explaining things, and he wants you to understand his thought process, and then he wants to hear the counter argument. So he's not just like, I like Pages. It's like, no, he's like, here's all the reasons why I think it would work. I disagree, but I like that he's thinking it through. And most of the time I tend to agree with Oli on things, but then there's times when I disagree strongly. But the other person who I thought had a really interesting week, and I'm not necessarily like saying this as like a go Mo type of thing. I just think it's really funny and interesting that if you watched TMA this last week and he was on 3 times, that Mo like seems so relaxed and so like, I don't care anymore. Like this is a totally different side of Mo than we've seen before, where he is just like on ultra sarcasm mode, which you get the little bits of that sometimes for him, but like the whole interview was just him ragging on guys and making fun of them and poking fun at them. And obviously like some of it's because he kind of being a little bit of a jerk sometimes, but like a lot of it's also like when you get talked about on radio 24/7 like that, like it's his way of just like kind of like just beating it back with the guys a little bit and just be like, all right, like you criticize me 24/7, I'm gonna poke fun back at you. And it was just kind of fun to listen to. And it was just a different side of Mo that I'm not like being like, oh, this is like, I'm so glad he's still here. Wish Bloom was still in charge. Wish Mo was done. But I just thought it was really funny to hear that side of Mo. And like honestly, like Red Bird Farming, it's like it'd be so funny to have Mo have his own radio show one day or like to write a tell-all book or something. Cause I just want to like hear more of like the unfiltered Mo. Cause one of the interviews he like talked about how, and one of the guys set him up, I can't remember who did it. Like there's just decisions they make sometimes where he wears it and he doesn't tell you the real or the full why behind it. And if he did, you would probably agree with him a little bit more. But he's shielding things because he keeps things in-house and he thinks that's professional, whether it's shielding other front office members, shielding ownership, shielding players. And he even talked about, he's like, I mean, it's not, he's like, he said it wasn't hard for him to do that because it's his job. He knows he signed up for, but sometimes he wishes people would stick up for him and say things and tell the full story and leak the full story, because it'd be nice if he wasn't getting beat down. But anyways, I just thought it was, I knew it was coming. I just wanted to talk about how it was funny to listen to Mo be like almost like that unfiltered uncle that you're like kind of funny at home when you talk like this, but I don't want to be in public when you're like ranting like this. That's the kind of Mo I felt like.
I didn't actually listen to any of Mo's comments.
Oh man, you should go listen.
Maybe I should, but I don't know. I'm sick of Mo. Sorry.
I'm ready for him to be done too. I just thought it was like a very like not what I was expecting to hear from Mo. And he also responded to Jim Edmonds' comments, and kind of said actually what we talked about, where it seems like Jim Edmonds basically wanted a backstage pass to say whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, but have zero consequences for it. And Mo was like, yeah, I mean, we're a fan of people coming back if they want to fully invest, but if they just want to be able to walk in, say a comment, and walk out whenever they want, like, that's a different level. And frankly, I'm sorry, love Jim Edmonds, but he's not Stan Musial. He's not Bob Gibson. Those are the guys he's bringing up used to do that. Ozzy, you feel like could do that. I don't think Edmonds has.
He still does that. Ozzy's down in camp right now.
Yeah, but like Ozzy also has official capacities he's a part of, and he isn't like complaining that he's not getting full access as a coach. Like Ozzy, I don't know how much Ozzy is around the team on a day-to-day basis in like during the year. And it sounds like Edmonds wants to be able to just walk around whenever he wants to and do whatever he wants to, which Mo said, and we've heard this before, that if Jim Edmonds wanted an official role and wanted to invest full time, they would make one for him. But he doesn't want to invest. He doesn't want to give his full credence to it. And so it's really easy for a guy to come in and just be like, oh, here's what I would do differently, and then walk away, and you don't have to deal with the ramifications of those consequences. When you have guys in there who are 10 months a year working 24/7, working with the players, and their jobs are on the line, and so like they're going to want to have the final say. I get that. So
yeah, no, I get it. And I don't know, Mo and Jim Edmonds, I feel like could go back and forth all day. I want to see that on a YouTube or something. But yeah, Mo, I mean, he's been asleep all winter. He hasn't really been doing much. So
yeah,
it's time to wake up and trade some of these pieces. You know, there's the Valentine that I made yesterday. I can't believe I didn't come up with that earlier, but I'm just waiting for you to make a move, Mo.
Hey, let's be a little bit more critical of Mo, and then we'll get to some of the camp vibes, which are definitely more exciting than the criticism we've given most offseason. But one of the things I'm still irked by, and we've talked about many times, is the fact that the Cardinals have way too many arms right now that they need to give playing time to, and it gives even more credence to the idea that an Erick Fedde or Steven Matz should have been dealt by this point. The Cardinals Ollie talked about how there's about 10 guys they've pegged as going to get starts this spring. Now, it could be fluid based off performance and other things that happen with that. But Andrew, I can name 18 guys right now that you can make an argument should get starts. And so even with just 10, it means they're cutting out 8. And so we know 6 of them, right? Gray, Michaelis, Fedde, Matz, Palante, McGreevy. That's 6. They've pegged Quinn Mathews as one of them at 7. So that means they have 3 spots that'll probably go to like Sem Robersa, Zach Thompson, and Matthew Liberatore. But then Kyle Leahy apparently is getting opportunity now.
Why?
This doesn't even mention Cooper Jerpy, who should get opportunities. Tink Hence, who should get opportunities. Graceffo, you can make an argument. Drew Rom, you can make an argument. Kyle Leahy, Munoz, Taylor, who they just brought in. Like, there's so many different guys. Roby, I don't know if I said him earlier. You can make an argument for way less of an argument, but like Max Rochick or like Ian Bedell, guys like that. Again, way lower on the totem pole here. But my point is, you can go like 18 deep with guys that it's like, I mean, sure, why not? So why do you need Fedde? I get that he raises your ceiling a little bit because he's like, obviously Fedde versus Zach Thompson's a very different story. But if you're trying to develop and give opportunities, why are you blocking so many of them from that? Especially because at some point we're going to want to see Quinn and Michael McGreevy have real runs this year. So like if they stay healthy, they're going to be in the rotation a lot. So then it's like, how do you fit in the starts for guys like Thompson, Libby, Graceffo, Rom, Tink Hence at some point? And someone can make the argument that's like, oh, well, Sem Robersa hasn't earned it, or like Cooper Jerpy, what have we seen from him yet, or whatever. But it's like, remember how we thought about Michael McGreevy last spring? It wasn't a guy who was going to be a starting pitcher for the Cardinals in 2025, but then he got opportunities and he proved himself. You need to give guys opportunities in a year like this. I'm so frustrated by it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think and Fedde definitely are 2 guys that need to go. And I mean, maybe Mo knows something that we don't, and Matt's already is hurt, right? Like the Angels knew that Rendon was hurt, and they didn't give him surgery until like 2 days ago. I was like, well, okay, maybe like because remember when Jack Flaherty showed up to camp and he was just like, I think that might have been lockout stuff, but like he showed up to camp and he was just hurt.
Yeah,
there could be guys like that.
True.
And we'll see what happens. No one's gone on the IL yet. I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but like, I don't know how many of these guys really need to get run in spring, right? Like, you can piggyback guys. Like, you're not going to give people 5-inning outings, right? Like, Michaelis will go 3, and then McGreevy can go 3, and then you can have someone else finish it out. So I'm not that worried about, like, if there's 18 guys that need to get run in spring, I'm sure they'll get it figured out. But like, does Zach Thompson really need another run as a starter, or Liberatore, or like Graceffo? Or Graceffo, I feel like a little bit more. But like, some of these guys, you kind of know what they're going to be. Zach Thompson had his chance to start. It went really bad. Matthew Liberatore, somewhat as well. Like, maybe not as fair of a chance to start, but I would much rather have a high leverage left-handed option out of the bullpen than maybe we have a starter, or maybe we have an okay reliever. Like, just give him something to focus on. I'm not worried about that. Why is Kyle Leahy getting chances to start? I don't know. Sandy's not here to defend himself. That's what you get for watching basketball. So I don't know. Like, that's fine. If they want to give him a couple appearances like that are lengthened out, and you need a long man in the bullpen, I'm sure Kyle Leahy. Like, if Kyle Leahy is making starts for the Cardinals this season, like, what has happened? Like,
yeah. I mean, to be fair, I would have said that about Michael McGreevy last spring. That if Michael McGreevy is making starts for you, what happened? And now it's like, why was he not making more starts for you last year? So like, I see both sides. But
yeah, but it's like, I don't know. Like, Michael McGreevy made a spot start. It was really, really good. And then we're like, okay, we need to see more of that. And then he didn't get another chance to start until like September. So like, that's fine. Like, if Leahy makes like one spot start, that's fine. But if he finds a rotation spot, then like that means you had 2 guys get hurt. Miles Michaelis was bad. Quinn Mathews wasn't ready. And like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things that have to go wrong for Kyle Leahy to be getting starts.
And he'll have to have something go right for him too. Like, they're not just gonna. But here's my point with it. Like, obviously, like Zach Thompson at this point, I'm not like of the opinion that he's gonna break out to be some kind of good starter. But again, could he have like a Palante type rebound? Because again, when Palante got reinserted into the rotation last year, I was like, why? We've seen this before, and he's not working on the bullpen, and then it worked. And now he's one of your top 3 starters. And same with Michael McGreevy. The guys next year that I'm prioritizing, that I want to see in the rotation, as long as, again, this always is dictated by, are they actually pitching well? Like, if Quinn Mathews is getting rocked out of spring training, looks terrible this year, obviously it's like, okay, something went wrong. He's not ready yet. But assuming they're pitching what we think they can do to their potential and they're healthy, I think you need to see McGreevy this year. I think you need to see Quinn Mathews this year, and you probably need to see at least one of, if not both of, Tink Hence and Cooper Jerpy this year. That's 4 guys right there with upside that I think you could give significant rotation a run to. Now, significant, I'm not saying 32 starts necessarily, but could you get 10 starts to Cooper Jerpy this year in a good scenario? Potentially. That's 4 guys right there that I think you need to see. Now, I think you could see, as in like, who knows what they could be, and I would rather see them get opportunity than run out Michaelis or Matz or Fedde every day when they're not a part of your future, is a Drew Rom, a Gordon Graceffo, a Matthew Liberatore, kind of, even though I like him in the bullpen. But like, if they think he's a starter, it's more valuable. Zach Thompson, Takeo Roby, he's more of the potential of those guys above, but like, he's maybe a tier below because of injuries right now and all that kind of stuff. Kyle Leahy, Munoz, Taylor. That's where I'm like, again, something probably, to your point, Andrew, went really wrong if Drew Rom got 8 starts this year. But do you even have enough to get him 2 to 3 to prove that next year he could be your Michael McGreevy type? Do you have enough for Graceffo in there? Again, some of them are getting opportunity on the bullpen where they can show a little bit of that too. And some of them are destined to be bullpen arms. Not all these guys are going to start. But just my point here is, if your long-term outlook is the youth, you're building for 2026, 2027. I know they want to win this year. I get it. They want to surprise people. But I said it in my story that went up today. They cannot prioritize, and they can't be more invested in surprising people than developing their team for the future. That still has to be the number one priority. You can surprise people while doing that. That's great. I love that. But if you're trying to surprise people because of what Steven Matz can do for you, Erick Fedde can do for you, Miles Michaelis this year can do for you at the expense of Quinn Mathews, Michael McGreevy, Tink Hence, or other guys, I don't get it. So,
yep.
But you know what? I am excited that they're excited. And let's end on a good note with this, that if you listen to Oli, listen to Mo, you listen to, more importantly, the players, they seem like they have a major chip on their shoulder, man. And like for all the reasons that we've been frustrated that they didn't reset from a front, like as in like the front office didn't reset the roster and trade people. They did reset the front office, which that's been exciting, and player development. And obviously Mo's not gone yet, but that's happening. They didn't reset the major league roster much. But you know who doesn't care? Brendan Donovan or Andre Palante or Alec Burleson, except he probably cares about the opportunities. But like they are coming into camp ready to prove people wrong. And this is different than last year where they were like,
particularly that one hits a little close to home.
Yeah, then I hope he proves Sandy wrong. Yikes. But like this is different than last year where they came into camp coming off one of their worst years in franchise history, where remember in 2023 they weren't supposed to be bad. They were hoping to be good, and then they just were horrible. Then they came into camp, we're like, hey, we gotta bounce back, right? And they did, but it was still disappointing. This is, would you agree this is the lowest expectations that like people have had for a Cardinal team in decades?
Well, I haven't lived that long, but in my lifetime, I think so. Yeah.
At least in your lifetime. Like since at least 2000, I don't think there's been, and that's what I mean, like since like the 97, 98 seasons type thing, like expectations have never been lower. And I kind of think they're all really annoyed by that. Like not annoyed as in like pouting about it, but they're like, these guys really think we're that bad. Like, let's go out and shock the world. And that's a fun team. Like, I mean, I'm not telling you it's going to happen. I'm not like, just because you want to shock the world doesn't mean you're going to shock the world, right? Like Miles Michaelis last year, he's like, all these Midwest farmers, let's go take out the payroll guys. It didn't work. But like a motivated Jordan Walker, motivated Nolan Gorman, Lars Nootbaar, Brendan Donovan, Alec Burleson, honestly, a motivated Nolan Arenado could be a fun team. What are you thinking?
I don't know. It could be fun. Like the team could be good. They could prove people wrong, but I mean, we need to see it first. Like we need to see them come into spring. I want to see at bats from these guys, and we're a week away. Like next week at this point, we'll be watching Cardinals baseball again, which is exciting. They moved the walls in at Roger Dean, so hopefully they won't take like 2 years to hit a home run. But like, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the young guys. I'm looking less forward to seeing Miles Michaelis on the mound. Like it's a mixed bag. There's guys that are very exciting that could be a part of this future. And then there's Erick Fedde starts where I'm just like, why am I even at the ballpark? Oh yeah, it's because they're giving away a Lars Nootbaar bobblehead and I wanted it. Right. Like there's going to be those days this season for sure. And like the youth movement seems like a half measure. I think we've talked about that forever, but we'll see what happens. Like we need to see this team play, and we need to see them.
Yeah.
Like some of these guys have success before I put any eggs in the they're going to be really good this year basket.
Oh, that's not necessarily what I was asking. Is like you should put eggs in the really good basket. I'm saying I just love the mentality. I love that they're entering camp like last year. Yeah. Okay, even compare last year where you have Nolan and Goldie who are like, yeah, we need more veterans around. Michaelis, like, yeah, we need more guys in the clubhouse to kind of keep the young guys in check, kind of lead, and we gotta figure this out, right? We gotta tighten the ship. And it's like, okay, give me a break. And then last year, things start to 2023, things start to go wrong. They're all like, oh, it's Wilson Contreras' fault. Throw him under the bus. Let's get it can't be our pitching that's so bad. It's definitely Wilson, which Ken Wilson wasn't the best behind the plate, but like it just seemed like the last 2 years there was a lot of finger pointing and blaming each other and like lack of accountability and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily think that was Ollie's fault at times. I think there's sometimes where he did that poorly and sometimes he did not, or he did it well. But it seemed like from the players there was just like this at times, and I'm not saying all of them, just like there's the stuff like that would come up. It was really frustrating. This year I sense more of a camaraderie of guys that are like, hey, like we're out to prove the world wrong. We're all out to personally and as a team be a lot better than we were last year. I just like the vibes this time. You can like the vibes and then end up being a 73 win team. Like, camp vibes do not mean you're going to win. But I very much like the sentiments coming out this time compared to the last few years where it felt just, I don't know, felt like guys were finger pointing. It felt like guys were like kind of figuring out how to make things work for themselves more than others. It was more of a veteran team last year. Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, Goldie, Nato, Contreras, Gray, Matz, Michaelis. Like, there was a lot more. And this year, I mean, you still have Contreras, you still have Gray, you still have Michaelis, you still have Nato, but the rest of the team's really young. And I like the movement here. Does not mean it will work. We have to see things on the field first, but I like the sentiment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like Oli always with his attitude towards the young guys. I feel like Mo is going to sell the team every year and be like, yeah, we can be good. And you're be like, no, you really can't. Like in 2023, like when the team is 10 and 25 or whatever, Mo was talking about having patience and whatever. And no, it's too late for that. So I don't know if the players are motivated. I like the roster, especially on the lineup side. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully they make a move or two. They ship some of these guys out. They add a couple of. They still need to add a reliever, don't they? Like they promised a tentpole bat and a reliever.
Well, okay, time out.
Is Nolan Arenado the tentpole bat?
Time out. They never promised those things. There was reporting that they were, before the season ended, before they announced their plan, that they could do a tentpole bat. But clearly, like, there was a major shift that was kept under wraps that most people didn't know about till Katie's piece really came out. So what, like, and Derek even acknowledged that. He's like, before they decided to go full reset, before they decided to do quote unquote reset, tentpole bat was something. And then they said they could explore adding a reliever or right-handed bat. Not necessarily that they would do those things. I mean, at this point, they've added a lot. I mean, they've got a lot of young arms and like the Nick Anderson type things that if you're trying to win this year, yeah, you need another reliever. But if you're trying to give opportunities, I don't think you necessarily need one unless you're going to potentially flip at the deadline.
Keeping Nolan Arenado is just like signing a free agent.
You know, that's true. It would be really funny if Mo hit us with that comment, which is like, we didn't expect Nolan to be here, so we got that bat. But, oh boy. Anyways, yeah, I think that's pretty much all for we've got today. This is our episode for the weekend this time, so we won't be live tomorrow, but Nolan's on his way to Florida, so we should be seeing him tomorrow or Monday. It'll be interesting to get some comments out of that. We'll be live again next week, and again, we've got some people from down at camp that we're going to have on the podcast here soon. Potentially some guys from the organization here soon. That would be fun to have on. And also just some outside people that we're lining up to talk more about the development of players and what they need to see steps-wise this year. And obviously check out Birds on the Farm as Kareem comes back from vacation, because there's going to be fun weekly episodes like they've been doing, but then also some really cool content that Kareem and Andrew have been working on. So excited for all that. As always, make sure to go check out 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. Use our code CARDS on Underdog Fantasy if you're interested in playing some fantasy sports. Like and subscribe, helps the channel a ton. We really appreciate you all. Really excited for this upcoming season and spring training, and we'll be with you every step of the way. So see you guys next time.
Thanks, Oli.